45 megapixels, 12 frames per second, animal eye detection autofocus. On paper, the specs of the R5 sound simply amazing. But is it an overheating mess, or can it deliver in the field? Hi everybody and welcome to the channel. In the past, as bird photographers, we always had to decide between a slow high megapixel camera with like an average ISO performance or a fast low megapixel camera with a good ISO performance. But what we really always wanted is a camera that has high megapixels so we can crop fast enough frame rate so we can get nice birds in flight, and really good ISO performance so you can shoot in those dark forest environments. And this camera promises to deliver all of that. So I was genuinely excited when it arrived. So let's look at the camera and some of the features and functions I was most concerned with. First of all, it has a fully articulating screen, so that's pretty cool if you're working like close to the ground or something, although personally I'll probably be using it like this most of the time. If you're grabbing the camera, you can hear like a little rattle or shake. That's the IBIS, so it's not broken, don't be afraid when you grab it out of the box. Talking about the IBIS, it's been pretty amazing. If you're using like a shorter lens, I've been using a 16-35 and a 70-200, it's pretty much like a tripod. Like I can handhold really long shutter speeds and my viewfinder isn't even moving. So it's been amazing for video as well on these shorter lenses. I can definitely handhold video for B-roll and get some really nice and stable footage. Does it work with the longer lenses? Yes, it does to a degree, but it's obviously less effective. If I'm hand holding a big 600mm lens, I'm simply moving around so much that the IBIS just becomes a little bit less effective. But what it's doing, it's definitely helping me to get a really nice and stable picture in the viewfinder. On my old cameras, on my 5D Mark IV for instance, even with the IS on my 600mm lens, the viewfinder was kind of moving around a fair bit and up and down, and that has definitely been much smoother and there's a lot less movement in the viewfinder with the IBIS, so I think that's definitely an improvement. As you can see, there's no battery grip. I haven't gotten it yet, but I definitely ordered one and I would definitely want to use it. Personally, I feel like the camera is pretty small, and if I had it with a 70-200 for instance, it started to hurt my wrist after a while because I couldn't just support it enough. I would have really liked to be able to put my hand a bit lower and have that battery grip. And also if I was shooting vertical, it's really annoying to shoot like that. I much prefer to have a nice vertical grip to shoot like that. So I'm just waiting for that to arrive. I would highly recommend it, and it will also help you with the battery life. Talking about the batteries, it has really not been an issue. I was worried about that, but so far battery life has been great as long as I'm using the new batteries that come with the camera. I've been trialing some older, I must say much older, I think 5D Mark II or 5D Mark III batteries, and they struggled, and the camera didn't even give me the full high-speed mode with those batteries. It was indicating that it wasn't able to have, I guess, enough power to have the high frame rate. Whereas with these batteries, I've been consistently getting at least 2,000 or 3,000 images per battery. So that's been amazing and really no downgrade from the 5D Mark IV in similar conditions. The camera comes with two card slots, one SD slot and one CF Express slot. These CF Express cards are really expensive, but they're also really awesome. They're really fast and it's basically impossible to hit the buffer if you're shooting with the CF Express card. I tried and I actually started to feel bad for taking so many images before I actually hit the buffer, and I easily took, I think, over 200 images before I hit the buffer once. But even when I hit the buffer, it was writing the files really quickly onto the card and it wasn't much of an issue. However, when I was using SD cards and I actually bought a fast SD card for this camera, I started to hit the buffer pretty quickly after like, I think around 50-60 shots, and then it just took forever to write on the card and it was really not fun. And the worst, what I tried to do when the camera kind of not froze, but it was just writing for such a long time onto the card, and I tried to swap to the other card, but it wouldn't even let me swap to anything else or even use some of the buttons. So the camera was really kind of stuck on the writing to the card mode, which was pretty annoying, and I had to wait and then quickly change back to the CF Express card. So if you're doing bursts, and trust me, it's very easy to do big bursts with this camera, you definitely want the faster card. And of course, the last thing everyone has been worried about, is the adapter. Is the adapter gonna work? Is it gonna be terrible? So far I must say, I don't even notice it has an adapter, and all the adapter does, as far as I know, is basically move the EF lenses forward to account for the missing mirror box in this camera compared to a DSLR, and performance has been great. Like, I wouldn't know I've been using an adapter. One other thing I noticed, and I think that's the same for all mirrorless cameras, because you're having an electronic viewfinder, the image stabilization on your lens is always on. That means if you take your camera off without turning it off, you will kind of mess with your IS because it's running and then you're ripping it off and you might damage it. This has happened to me a few times already because in the past with DSLR cameras, there was no really the need to turn the camera off when changing extenders, for instance. So now I have to turn the camera off and wait. I actually stopped it. So I have to wait 7 seconds for the camera to do the mirror cleaning and then the IS to stop, and then I can take the camera off, put the extender on, and then turn it back on. So that has really slowed it down compared to a DSLR where I can just rip the camera off, put the extender on, and be ready to shoot again, probably in less than half the time that I have to wait now. For me, in the field, when I just quickly want to rip the camera off, put an extender on, and keep shooting, this will be a little bit of an issue, and I will definitely have to get used to that. This brings me to the viewfinder and the one thing I was probably worried about the most. I've used an EOS R a couple of times and I found the lag in the viewfinder, or the blackout or kind of freezing between the shots, really annoying, and I actually struggled to keep the birds when they're flying past me in the viewfinder because it would go like dut, 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 rather than kind of being like just smooth and me being able to follow the bird. So that was a major concern, but this lag has really not been an issue with this camera, and trust me, I trialed it out and was really worried about it. But if we look at the footage from the viewfinder here, you can see the blackout is basically not noticeable, and it's very easy for you to anticipate the bird's movement and go with the bird because you can still kind of see it swimming or flying, and it's really not a problem. So I've been very relieved with that and positively surprised how good the electronic viewfinder is. And in all honesty, I probably wouldn't want to go back. I can have a histogram in the viewfinder, it does the exposure simulation, and I've all these other cool features in the viewfinder that make my life so much easier compared to a normal viewfinder or old school viewfinder. So all in all, I'm very happy with the viewfinder. I put it to the smooth settings, but I will make a separate video about all the settings I'm using on this camera because it took me about 2 days to go through all the menus and find all the right settings and tweak them so to get the best results. So that will be one of my next 2 videos where you get an idea of the settings I use and how I set up this camera to get the absolute most out of it. Animal eye detection autofocus. Sounds like a silly gimmick, but it's actually amazing to use. The days of focus and recompose are over. The camera does all that for us now. Basically, it takes the focusing for us out of the equation. We don't have to worry about keeping focus on the bird anymore. The camera does that for us. What we have to do now is only focus on keeping good composition of the shots while the camera maintains focus on the bird's head at all times. It's that good. This animal eye detection autofocus has also been amazing when it comes to birds in flight photography. Traditionally, I didn't have the highest success rate with birds in flights on my 5D cameras, but this camera has taken my success rate of in-focus sharp flight shots from maybe 20 to 30% to 90%. So I'm more than stoked with that. You simply press the button that activates animal eye detection autofocus and it instantly jumps on the bird's head and finds it quicker than you could ever do yourself with a traditional autofocus. So that has been really amazing, and it's such a good feature. I can now hold the focus, recompose my shots, and the camera stays on the bird the whole time, even if I move the camera around a lot. That's something we simply couldn't do before this camera. Does this mean every shot is sharp now and I never take an out of focus image? No. That's not the case. Like all autofocus systems, there will be times where this camera misses focus. Sometimes it jumps onto the bird's nostril, thinking it looks like an eye, or it slightly goes off to the beak or the ear or other parts of the bird. That happens at times, but overall, the chance of getting sharp shots has increased dramatically in my opinion. You're never fully losing track of the bird. With my 5D cameras, it quite often happened that I try to track a bird, I slide off with the autofocus field onto the background, and once I'm on the background, I can never get back onto the bird because it takes too long, or I manually have to try to refocus and the bird's long gone by then. Whereas with this camera, because it doesn't fully jump off the bird, the chances of getting much better and much sharper images have increased dramatically. I'm really stoked and really happy with this autofocus system. Right out of the box, the way it was set up, I found it a little bit confusing to use. What happens sometimes, I would look for something in like the lower left corner and I just didn't feel like I have enough control. So I changed the setting to having one field first and then the animal eye detection autofocus starts looking for the bird from there. I found that a lot more helpful because now I can direct the camera in the right direction. What the animal eye detection autofocus also struggled with is multiple birds. It's actually very hard for you to pick the bird you want to focus on, especially if it is kind of lined up in a similar area. The animal eye detection autofocus will simply just pick one of the birds, and once it picked the bird, it wants to stay on the bird. So getting onto another bird is actually quite tricky. And the solution for that is that I set up the camera in a specific way. I've activated back button autofocusing, but instead of just using one button, I now set up two different autofocus modes on two different buttons. So what have I done? As the base mode, I do not have chosen the animal eye detection autofocus in the camera. No, I set it to the traditional autofocusing mode and then to the spot autofocus. So it's one little field that when I press it will focus exactly on the spot that I've focused on. And I set the focusing for that onto the AF on button. My front shutter button only takes the picture. It does not do any focusing for me. And secondly, I assigned the animal eye detection autofocus to the star button. So whenever I start pressing the star button, it overrides the normal autofocusing and activates the animal eye detection autofocus. Why have I set it up in that way? Because now I can kind of direct the camera on what I want to focus on. Before, where I didn't have that, the camera kind of just randomly picked whatever it wanted to focus on. Now I pre-focus with the traditional spot autofocus on the bird's head that I want to focus on, and then press the animal eye detection autofocus and it will keep focusing on the bird that I've pre-focused on. With birds in flight, this is not as important, and if you have even an autofocus viewfinder, press the animal eye detection autofocus and it just randomly sees a bird somewhere, it will jump onto the bird and stick with that bird. So that's not as much of a problem. But having a row of birds sitting somewhere, pre-focusing on one bird and then activating the animal eye detection autofocus has been much more successful for me than trying to get the animal autofocus to actually focus on one specific bird. In that automatic mode, it just picks one bird and it can be frustrating at times. So setting it up the way that I've set it up has dramatically increased the usability for me and makes it much easier to actually get the bird in focus that I want to have in focus. What I noticed with using this camera and the animal eye detection autofocus is that if you have nice and high shutter speeds and do nice and smooth movement, your hit rate will almost be 100%. Whereas if you have not fast enough shutter speeds and move your camera around quite sort of drastically in like a jerky kind of way, the animal eye detection autofocus will have trouble kind of staying on the eye and you will get a lot more kind of just out of focus or motion blurred images. But I guess it makes sense. If you do a rapid movement, the camera has to quickly jump through a lot of autofocus fields trying to stay on the bird's head, and it doesn't always succeed. So do smooth and nice movements and try to anticipate what the bird is doing, and you will get an amazing success rate of sharp shots with this camera. So let me show you some examples now of images that I've taken and the things that have really impressed me with the camera in the field. So looking at this series of silver gull roars in fast on image viewer, you can see the camera nicely track this silver gull against this really busy background, giving me a great chance of getting some fantastic flight shots. Typically, most of my other cameras would have always just jumped onto the background straight away, not giving me any chance of getting shots like this, where this camera just stuck on the bird the whole time, did not jump onto the background once. Here's another particularly impressive example with the bird flying against a busy background. It's nice and sharp, the camera tracks it nicely, and now there's this bit of grass coming into the picture, but the camera actually keeps tracking the bird behind the grass, keeps stayed on it the whole time, didn't even get distracted at all by something being right in front of the bird. Pretty amazing. Here we got a nice example of how the camera just stays on one bird and does not get distracted at all by another bird. I focused on the rear bird, and then this bird in the front here came into the picture, but that didn't distract the camera at all. It stayed on the bird that I initially focused on, even though that other bird was flying right through my viewfinder. But the camera, once it's locked on the one bird, it will stay with that bird. One more set of images to look at for birds in flights where the background changes from water to a busy background, and let's see how the camera did with that. So here's the bird, camera acquired focus, stayed on the bird, now it's flying towards me. So you can see it's still nice and sharp. And now it starts to enter with that dark background behind me, and I'm actually kind of struggling to track the bird, but the camera doesn't struggle whatsoever, staying nicely on the bird throughout the whole landing process and giving me a great opportunity to get some really nice images. And that's simply amazing, isn't it? No matter what the background is, the camera doesn't care at all. It just gives you nice and sharp images. And that is something that has really impressed me. I was never able to take flight shots like this, and now I can simply with the press of one button. Crazy. Here's another just nice portrait, just showing you how nice and sharp this image is with the adapted 70 to 200mm lens at ISO 1600. And here another cool example showing you how well the camera focused right on the bird's eye. And here's another shot that I got while I was shooting the silver gulls. I noticed through the corner of my eye there was suddenly this gull landing, started to call just to the side of me with a beautiful dark blue background. So I ripped the camera around, and while I was still ripping it around, I pressed the animal eye detection focusing button and started shooting. So I got one shot. The next shot the gull already stopped calling. With a normal camera I simply wouldn't have gotten this shot because I would have never been able to acquire focus this fast. So this is the in the field cases where I see this camera being simply superior to anything else, because I have the ability to just press a button and the camera jumps onto the bird straight away, allowing me to just get more and faster images. I also had the opportunity to take the camera to the local duck pond and attached it with the adapter to my 600mm version 2 lens that you can see in the background there, and just try to see how it performs, just tracking ducks against the water, against busy backgrounds, or even like through bushes. So I just wanted to show you some nice examples where you just see the beautiful detail, the really nice sharpness all around, all the feather details. This was shot at ISO 800 at 600mm, all raw files. In this particular example, I liked how again the camera stayed on the bird's eye. Most other cameras would just simply jump around between the two birds, whereas this camera just stayed glued to the bird's head that I initially focused on. Next, I want to show you a series of images where I actually underexposed a fair bit and then just tried to be mean to the camera, move it around and just try to see if it can keep focus on the code even when I was going through the bushes, past the bushes. So let's look at these images, trying to go like up and down and moving around. And I was just firing away the whole time as well. So I easily took like 150, 200 images while tracking this bird. So as you can see now, it's entering this busy background. I purposely moved the camera way up, see if it would jump on the background, but it stayed glued to the bird the whole time without really giving it any trouble of following it. As you can see here, now it starts to swim into the bushes. Now there's branches getting right in front of it. Does not bother the camera at all. It stayed on the bird the whole time. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? And just one more example of a duck that is pretty dark, pretty late, as you can see by the settings, 1/800 of a second, f8, ISO 8000, me just trying to push the limits again. And look at this, there is Not much noise in this shot at all. It is absolutely usable at ISO 800. Crazy. At ISO 8000. See, I'm not even used to those high ISO numbers. Here are some more sample images now of some rainbow lorikeets in my backyard, and I really tried to push the boundaries again, attaching the 600mm version 2 lens with the 1.4 and the 2x extender, and some shots without the extenders in bad light with high ISO conditions, just seeing how the camera would react. It did very well. The only thing I noticed, it struggled a little bit with the 2x extender, as you would expect in these dark conditions, but the viewfinder kind of became a little bit sluggish. With the bare 600mm lens, it's nice and fast and responsive, whereas with the 2x extender, it kind of felt like a little bit heavy, like you're dragging it a little bit, but I assume that's because there's much less light. So I took those shots, took some shots at ISO 3200, 6400, just a few, and then I looked at the shots on the computer and my mind was blown. I opened those 12,800 ISO images and I couldn't believe it. They were actually totally fine, and I could hardly see any noise in the raw files. It was simply amazing. So when I compare it to my other cameras, there's simply no other Canon camera that I've used that has higher megapixels that can even compare to that. On my 5D Mark IV, I may have been happy to use like 3200, 6400 very reluctantly, whereas with this camera, I'm probably actually confident to use 12,800, maybe even 25,600. It still feels strange to me to even think about these high ISO levels, but the camera certainly seems capable of delivering the performance when it comes to these high ISO numbers with still decent dynamic range, not too much noise, and great details. And if you ran some noise reduction on these files, you would have completely clean looking files with great details at ISO 12,800. That's mind-blowing. So I think the camera has dramatically increased in that regard and will definitely help me in the field on those dark days to get much better images. Having a camera with 45 megapixels, people always talk about the ability to crop, so I wanted to do something crazy. I used one of the seagulls examples where the gull was way too far away already. I made a really tight crop, edited the picture, and looked at the size, and it was still 6 megapixels. So this huge crop is still 6 megapixels. Now I wouldn't use this file to blow it up big on a wall, but if I was selling something like this to a magazine for like a quarter size print or for the web, this would be totally fine. Having the ability to crop in this far and still get a decent sized file will be very helpful for those moments where you just can't get close enough to that bird of a lifetime, and now you might actually still be able to get a decent shot out of it. I also really like the ability to have so many different video modes to shoot on, and especially that 4K high quality mode has given me really crisp and beautiful looking footage, so I'm looking forward to using that more. The camera's also really quiet, which I found really nice. 5D or 1DX camera just hammer away, they're so noisy and the birds instantly look up towards you. Whereas with this camera, I've not had one bird yet that even noticed the camera sound when I was clicking away with the mechanical shutter, so that's been really great. So what's not to like about this camera? What I found complicated is how you get to the video mode now. There's no way to go from camera shooting stills to standby video mode with just the press of one button. That's something that I would really like to see, but it might be in there. If you know about it, how you can set it up, let me know in the comments. I would really appreciate that. But like I said, so far I have not found a way to just press one button and switch from video to stills and back. As we all know, with new cameras, there's also no software available yet. So you can either use DPP, which is kind of stuck in 1998 and really not fun to use, or I used Adobe DNG converter that converted my RAW file to a DNG, and then I could open it up in Camera Raw, but I felt like the quality of the DNG wasn't quite up to the quality of the RAW file. It was a little bit darker, not giving me the best image quality. So I'm hopeful within a couple of months, hopefully, that there will be better software with matching camera profiles so we can get the absolute most out of our RAW files. And lastly, we all know overheating is an issue with this camera. And the more you use it, the more the recording time availability for you in the high quality video modes seem to go down. Yesterday I had my first experience with it. After I filmed most of this video, I went ahead and took some B-roll of this camera where I just turned it on, had the screens running, I was just sitting on the tripod after a cold start. And after 1 hour of shooting some B-roll off the camera, I was down to only 3 minutes of available video recording to me. So in the standby mode, the camera had built up a lot of heat, killing almost all the video features. And it also drained the battery considerably. Because it was indicating the battery is really low, I changed the battery, but then after I changed the battery, I had an overheating warning and only 1 minute of video left. So then I thought, is it really the standby that's messing with the camera? So I grabbed the camera, went out, took about 2000 images with it on a fresh battery, and the battery is only down to 77%, and after that 20-30 minutes of taking those 2000 images, I still had the full 20 minutes of full quality 4K video available to me. So taking a lot of images in a short period of time didn't really affect the overheating. But just having the camera sit somewhere with the screens on totally made it overheat. So my recommendation for you would be, if you're using this camera and you intend to shoot videos and stills, always turn it off whenever you can. If you're standing somewhere waiting for a bird to come, it's probably better to turn it off or to turn the auto power off on so the camera quickly turns off after 30 seconds or something, not allowing it to build up that heat in the standby mode that then eventually will kill all other features. So that's definitely a problem. It hasn't affected me too much yet, but I definitely see it affecting me down the road in the field, and it's something that I'm a little bit concerned with, and hopefully can find some sort of fix to that to at least mitigate those times a little bit more and give you at least some minutes of video available when you need them. A lot of people have asked me, would you choose the R5 or the R6 for bird photography? And for me, after trying the R5, I haven't tried the R6, but the R5 would be the clear choice for me. 45 megapixels, that really good high ISO performance and that amazing autofocus just put it over the top for me. And when it comes down to it, 45 megapixels with great image quality and great ISO performance will beat 20 megapixels for bird photography any day of the week. So other than budget, where the R6 clearly wins, the R5 would be my choice for bird photography. All in all, the R5 is an amazing stills camera for bird photography. It also has amazing video capabilities, but they come with severe overheating limitations. So if you can live with those, I would definitely recommend the R5 for your bird photography, because it has been simply amazing to use it. The high ISO performance, the great image quality, the high megapixels, and that amazing animal eye detection autofocus simply put it over the top for me when it comes to bird photography, and I know it will help me to take amazing bird images going forward. I've also really enjoyed using the EVF because now I can have the histogram displayed in the viewfinder, negating the need for me to do test shots and just speeding up the whole process overall. If you want to take your bird photography to the next level, make sure to check out my masterclass on editing, my video purge, and my ebooks down there in the description. I've linked them for you, and I know they will help you to become a standout bird photographer. Other than that, let me know in the comments, do you have any questions about the R5? Do you want me to try out certain things? Let me know in the comments. So please give me a thumbs up for this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in one of my next videos very soon. Enjoy your day. Bye.